All right, ladies and gentlemen, Trey Smith here. Very excited about tonight. So, first off, thanks guys for joining me. This is going to be fun. It's going to be different than we typically do. This is not a product release event. You're not going to see a bunch of fancy motion graphics and then a big reveal of some new software. Actually, I'm actually going to show you guys what we're doing in Buildbox. You're going to see a little bit of something we call Buildbox Next at the end of this event. Some people are actually going to get a chance to play around with this, so stay tuned for that. But this event's not going to be like our typical ones, okay? This is all about what we're doing in our game business. This is me with a keynote presentation, just showing you exactly what's working for us now. You guys probably heard last week in a couple emails and a video, I talked about how I met with David Reichelt, the creator of Color Switch. I flew out to Amsterdam. I met with Simon Crack. I met with Kevin Wolstenholme. And I talked to these guys who are crushing it. They have 10 Apple features each in the past year and a half or something like that. And talked to these guys and said, hey, what are you doing? I met people out here in Silicon Valley this year and asked them, successful game developers and game business owners, what are you guys doing? And everyone I'm seeing who is successful right now is doing the same thing we're doing. And that's what I'm going to show you guys tonight. So welcome to the How to Crush the App Store event. And it's called this for a reason. I'm going to show you guys how to crush 2017 and specifically what's working now. And it's really cool. It's not that difficult. And in my eyes, I'm very glad that the industry has shifted. We're going to talk about how it's shifted, but it's really a great step in the right direction because now you can build a sustainable business. And that was not always the case with mobile games, as a lot of you guys know. All right, so again, my name is Trey Smith. I'm the founder of a company called Buildbox. And in case you don't know us, if you haven't heard of Buildbox, we make game creation software. This is a picture of it here. And it's really cool. It's easy to use. It's made games like Color Switch and The Lines In and Slip Away, Bottle Flipping. A lot of these meme games, Trump on the Run, and a lot of these different meme games were created with Buildbox. We use it ourselves solely in our game company. And it's fun software. It's actually done a lot better than we anticipated, to be honest with you. We've had now over 90 different games have been made with Buildbox that have been featured by Apple or broken the top 100. That's in the past 18 or 19 months. So pretty insane. Really, really excited about the whole Buildbox community. For all you guys who are Buildbox customers and users who are on this event, thank you so much. You're awesome. Keep it up. I love showing off the stuff that you're creating. But I'm going to tell you guys, this event is not about Buildbox. That's about it. Besides showing you guys a sneak peek at Buildbox Next at the end of the event, we're not going to talk about Buildbox at all. This event is about you. It's about building an indie game business. And now you might be asking yourself, these guys make software. Do they really know anything about the game business? And that would be a great question. I can see asking that myself if I was watching an event like this. So I'll tell you, before I started Buildbox, I started a game company. This game company is now called Buildbox Games, which makes sense since we're heavily invested in creating this software. But the original name of it was Kaya Bit Games, which is named after my daughter, Kaya. And we had a lot of hit games back then. This is in 2010, I started this company. And together with Nick Rudenko, Nick is now our CTO at Buildbox. A lot of you guys know Nick and follow him on Facebook and stuff. And Nick was the first hire I ever made in this game company. And then this game company ended up turning into Buildbox and expanding, etc. But we made a lot of games back then that did pretty good, like Jump Pack, Maze Plus, Monster Magic. All these games broke the top 25. And here we are now 5 years later, and we still have a very profitable game business that is actually doing better than ever. Our last 2 years of revenue was more than the previous 4 years combined. So it's been a really, really good run. And using Buildbox, we've created a lot of top mobile games you might have played recently, more recently than Jump Pack and those other games. Like The Lines In, Nick made a game called Sky, made a game called Phases, Wall Switch, The Pit, a lot of games. And in total, we've had 8 different mobile games break the top 25 of all apps in the US on the iPhone charts. So that's pretty cool. And as you guys know, as I talked about last week, we just crossed 56 million downloads, which is pretty awesome. So as you can see, we have a lot of experience in the indie game world. We actually started there and then got into software, not the opposite. And it's worked out great for us, but it's not been by accident. We use very specific systems to grow our business. And on this event, I'm going to show you exactly what those are. But first, I want to talk to you about the shift because the mobile industry, the app industry, has gone through a major, major shift. Things change extremely fast in the mobile world. And what worked last year won't work this year. And even to be more specific, and this is interesting because I haven't seen anyone come out and say this. When I wrote this blog post, I searched around. I didn't see anyone talking about this. But App Store optimization, I'll be the first to say it, is dead. And if you're not familiar with App Store optimization with ASO, here's a quick breakdown. In the early days, most people got downloads, including me, through people searching the App Store. For example, if you ranked number 1 for fun game, then you would get a lot of downloads from people searching fun game. And this is how we got our first 10 million downloads in Kayabit games, was through ASO. But then something happened. Apple made 5 dramatic changes, and this changed the whole game for ASO. The first change that Apple made was as more apps were added, search became diluted. And in Apple's defense, they couldn't really help this, okay? But let me give you an example. About a year and a half ago, Apple would actually show you how many results were for a specific keyword. They quit doing this, but I snagged a screenshot, or found one rather, that had this on there. And you can see, this is a couple years ago. When you search dead, 1,522 results would come up, okay? That's just on one kind of random keyword. It's not like it was game or free or something that would be really high trafficked. And the second thing, and Apple did do this one, they created a trending section. And I think it was a smart idea, but still it lowered the search volume. Now, a lot of people, when they open this up, instead of searching, they're just clicking on something that's already trending. And I don't blame them for doing this, but again, it did affect ASO. Then the number 3 thing that Apple did is they added ads to take the top spot. This just happened recently. Now, you already don't have a lot of screen real estate here that your game can show up in. And now that ads take up a dramatically large portion of the top section there, you have even less. Number 4, they changed the search algorithm multiple times to show more mainstream apps. Was this a bad thing? No, I think it was a really smart thing. Of course, Temple Run doesn't really need more downloads, but it provides a great experience for its users. And I don't blame them one bit for doing that, but it hurt ASO. And then number 5, Apple decreased how many apps show when you search. Okay, they used to have a setup sort of like this back in I think it was iOS 4 is when they changed this. And it was great. You could type in free game or some search term, and you would be able to scroll through a lot of different games. But then now this is what it looks like. You type in free game, you're going to see one game in just the very top of another one. This is fantastic if you're the top game. And this is one reason that 8-Ball Pool and games like this do extremely well. The rich do get richer in the App Store because of search, or you could say the downloaded get more downloaded. And this is a prime example. They're constantly in the free charts and they're constantly in top grossing. So it's not that ASO quit working. It's that it just only favors now apps that are already doing really well. You'll notice when an app does shoot up in ASO, that is a new app. It's only going to be there for about a week until Apple docks its search power. They do that. They give like a little bit of power to an app for 1 week, and then they remove this power from that app and it sinks down. So you can't build a lasting business on it unless you somehow get massive amounts of traffic. Okay, so ASO got tough. In the early days, app search is how people grew their business. Heck, we got our first 10 million downloads through app search. But now, I do not know a single person who is actively growing a business with ASO. Now, this doesn't mean that no one out there is making $1 off of ASO, okay? There are some people doing it, serving really small niches and different things like that. But I don't know anyone who's crushing it with ASO, whose business is getting bigger month over month, like the other ways that you can grow games and grow your game business. ASO dying created a major discovery problem for indie guys like us, for small-time publishers. And this is very typical once an industry matures. The early adopters, they get in, they figure out some sort of system that's going to have their app or their game or their software or their book or whatever media industry it is discovered. And then as it gets more crowded, then that discovery goes down, okay? And this is very typical. So what's the solution? Well, to figure out the solution, we should look at other more mature entertainment industries and see what happened there, because these problems that we are facing right now in the app industry are absolutely nothing new. In fact, this discovery problem has happened in every other entertainment industry ever. It wasn't always App Store search, it wasn't always ASO, but there was something that worked and then stopped, and then discovery became difficult. And in each industry, every media industry ever has always spawned a whole new sub-industry to fix this problem. So let me give you guys some examples. Let's start with the music industry. That's a fun one. How do creators of songs get their music out into a crowded marketplace? Discoverability is very difficult. Distribution is very difficult. And they do it with record labels, right? If you're a musical artist, you want to be signed to Capitol Records, EMI, etc. In fact, I did some research on this because I was curious. There's only 2 artists who have ever hit #1 on the Billboard charts in the whole history of recorded music. There's only 2 people to ever hit #1 without a record label. One is pretty recent, Macklemore, which is pretty famous. But then before that was Lisa Loeb in 1994 because she was friends with Ethan Hawke and gave a song that she made to Ben Stiller. All right, some random trivia for you. He put it on the soundtrack to Reality Bites and it hit #1. That's the 2 times that it's ever happened. So it's possible, but it is very unlikely. The vast majority of people who are doing well in the music industry are signed artists. They're not unsigned artists. And this is typical with every industry. How do the books you read make it to Barnes and Noble? All right, they go through a book publisher like Random House, HarperCollins. How do movies you see get distributed to movie theaters, right? Obviously, they're not driving them to the theaters themselves. They're going through film studios like Miramax, Weinstein Company, MGM, etc. And what about the video games you play on consoles? All right, they are distributed through game publishers, Microsoft, EA, Bethesda, probably pronouncing that wrong. All right. And you know what's funny about Bethesda is I am a huge fan of their games, right? Loved Morrowind, played Skyrim, Oblivion, all of them. And I thought, actually, I don't play the Fallout games as much. And I really like the setting, but something about it, for some reason it hadn't grabbed me. But when it comes out for VR, I am. And what's interesting is I thought they made Dishonored. I bought Dishonored and I really liked it. I didn't buy Dishonored 2, but I really liked the first one. And then I found out they just published that game. A lot of the games you like probably aren't by the company you think they are, which is pretty fascinating to me. So music labels, book publishers, film studios, and console game publishers, they all serve the same purpose. That is to provide traffic, to provide distribution, and most importantly, to get the top tier content out to the masses. Now, the reason that I bolded top tier is because that's a really important word here, a really important phrase. You don't see publishers in any of these industries. You don't see record labels signing crappy music, all right? You don't see Miramax getting behind and really producing terrible movies, all right? But when the primary source of traffic for an industry is not based on any type of filtering, and that's what publishers are, they're filters for the top tier content, then you get a lot of crap in the industry. I'll give you an example. When ASO was the primary source of traffic for indie developers in the App Store, what did people focus on? Creating the best game they could? No, they focused on trying to nail down some search term. All right, there was a lot of really low quality content. You've seen it. You've been to the App Store and seen how much junk there was in there, and it's cleaned up a lot. And I think that's why Apple made these changes, because they didn't want people to find these really bad games. I think ASO was imploded because it was abused. And luckily, the low quality apps did not kill the industry. So it did evolve, and it took a while, but the app industry did mature, and it graduated to the publisher phase of distribution. So we're going to talk about the publisher phase, how to use this, what we do in our systems. But first, let's talk about all the app distribution phases, so we can go back in time to 2009 and see what led up to where we are today. Now, in 2009, the primary way to get distribution or traffic for your app was to be featured. Now, there were some cases where you could be mentioned in the New York Times or something like that and hit the top 100, but that was rare. If you wanted to build a business back then, it was based on being featured. That sounds super scary, but again, it wasn't difficult to get featured back then. It was a really small market. We got featured in games that would never be featured now, and it was a lot easier back then. Then in 2011, it was about paid acquisition. Now, it's still about paid acquisition if you're a public company, if you were making social games, if you were like Machine Zone, MZ Now, or Supercell, and you're making $1 million a day, then you have a lot of money and you can do paid acquisition. But because of all those big behemoth companies, they drove up the prices for the indie developers, and paid acquisition died out really about 2012, late 2012. Then in 2013, ASO really hit. Started a little bit before that, but this is when it was really in its prime. People were claiming really good spots for top games. We did it too. We ranked number one for the word music, for the word games, for free game. We had a lot of really good terms back then. But then again, this died out. And then in 2016, started in 2015, really hit its stride this year. It was the publisher-based distribution model. And this is what everyone I know who's having success with video games in the mobile market is doing. So maturing to this phase is a great thing for developers. Instead of chasing our tails and trying to figure out what trick will work this week, how I can get ranked for this term, or do this, change my company name, or whatever trick of the week might be, we can focus on simply making games. The publishers do all the heavy lifting, and we just focus on creation. So how does mobile game publishing work? Well, it's actually pretty simple. I'll walk you through the model now. First, you are the developer, all right? Even if you're not technically a developer as the game business owner, we're going to refer to you as the developer. And you create the game, and you own all the rights. And this is important, guys. When you sign a game with a publisher, you are not signing over the rights to your game. You still own that IP. You sign a contract with the publisher for X amount of months. Typically, this will be 24 months or 2 years. Sometimes it'll be 3 years, but it can be as long or short as you and your publisher agree. They upload the game to their account and they do all the marketing. Now, when this contract expires, when the 24 months or whatever is up, you get the game back and you can put it in your account if you want. Now, while you have the contract active, you split the revenue. And again, this is just for the amount that you've agreed on, the amount of months. At the end, you either renew or you get your game back. We have always renewed because it's always a good deal and our games are still making money. But if you feel like it did not go as well as you planned or hoped it would, you can get the game back and relaunch it yourself. So the interesting thing is this: while you have to split your money, the revenue, with the publisher, overall, you'll make much more on average. Let me give you an example. You can make 100% of a small pie, or you can make 50% of a much larger pie. And of course, your publisher will make the other 50%. Now, I'm not saying that you're always going to get a 50-50 split. Different publishers have different deals. But on average, even if you are in a publishing deal where you get 20%, you're going to make more revenue than you would going at it alone. So how is this possible? Why does it work like this? Why not just do what the publisher does? Because publishers typically will get your game much higher in the charts than you ever will alone. Since ASO is dead, if you have to go at it alone, you're basically praying for an Apple feature. That's pretty much your only option. And there are now 7,000 apps released each week on iOS, and Apple features about 10 games per week. Sometimes they feature less. For example, this Thanksgiving, they actually featured just one game, Super Mario Run, which isn't even out yet. I was shocked when I was making this presentation. It was during the Thanksgiving week. And I was looking at this and I was like, let's see how many games. I want to make sure I give an accurate response. And I pulled up iTunes and there was one. It wasn't even out yet. Now, as you can imagine, it would have been really frustrating releasing this week. It's great if you're Nintendo, but it's bad if you're anyone else. But if you have a publisher, you're not dependent on Apple. So now the big question is this: how can publishers get games to the top better than we can? Well, each publisher has their own story and they have their own unique ability. They all do different things and they use different styles of marketing. But let's look at some examples. So here's how publishers push. Ketchup, which is arguably the biggest publisher, they just sold to Ubisoft and they're a huge company. They have an app network. They announced when they did their acquisition of more than 700 million downloads. All right, that's pretty amazing. Almost 1 billion people have downloaded their games. And they can promote a game to as many of those people as they want. So that's a pretty big way to push. Fortify Games, publishers of Color Switch and the new powerhouse in the publishing world, they promote through Fortify social media channels with over 10 million fans. And they have huge social influence, okay? So they get a lot of traffic from social media. Absolute Games, they're here in Silicon Valley and they have great relationships with the App Store feature teams. I've met with David, the founder of Absolute, super smart guy. They've had more than 70 games get prominent features. They also do cross promotions. As their network gets bigger, just like Ketchup and all the other publishers, they push through their other apps. Other publishers like Nanovation and Umbrella Games, they also have great relationships with Apple. They also promote in their own cross promotion network. And some of these guys also know Instagram stars and influencers and a whole lot more. So as you can see, they all have a different story, but they have one thing in common. what they do is not very repeatable. Not saying it's impossible, but it's not easy. It's hard to get 700 million downloads or have 10 million followers or know the right people at Apple. And honestly, for me, it is completely fine. I would much prefer to focus on making games and let other people do the promotional work. For me, making games is the fun part. So now let's talk about the other big elephant in the room question. How much can you make with a publisher? Okay, if you Google around, you're not going to find any answers on this. And there are two reasons people rarely answer this online. First, they can't discuss specific game revenue because they're under contract. You'll never hear us talking about any game revenue because we're under contract on all of our games. And part of that contract says we don't talk about that. Also, game revenue can wildly vary based on many different factors. Any publisher can push out a bomb, okay? Any publisher can push out a game that takes off like wildfire and does amazingly well. It's a really big, wide range. So basically, there is no single answer here. It's a really big sliding scale, and it varies greatly depending on the publisher, the game, the viralness of the game, how good your game is, and how well it monetizes. Now, after talking with hundreds of developers and publishers over the years, here's what we've seen on that sliding scale. But please note, your experiences could be very, very different. These are raw estimates here for example purposes, and they should be treated as such. All right, so let's go over a list of general ideas for developer revenue estimates. Now, this is assuming you have a decent publisher, especially someone that has a group of apps that they can cross-promote to previous successful games. That's really important, okay? Because the great thing about that is if they have a decent size install user base, not even as big as Ketchup necessarily, but a decent size, then even if your game does bomb, it can still generate some revenue, okay? Even if Apple doesn't feature it, if it's not in the top 25, they can still promote it to the previous users. In this case, over time, with a notable publisher, you should be able to make $1,000 from the game on the low end. All right, now, is it possible to make less than this? Absolutely. It's very dependent on your game and who you sign it with, okay, guys? There's a lot of people out there that promote themselves as publishers that have no marketing sense, that have absolutely no clue how to get games to the top. And if you sign with someone like that, it's very possible you could have $0 revenue. So we're talking about notable publishers, and I'll mention some of those in this event. All right, now, if you have a moderate success, we're talking about a game that breaks the top 100, does fairly well, not top 25, maybe top 50, something like that. It's a moderate success. Then you can look at making $10,000 over time, okay? Even if it's in the top 100, top 75, that's very possible. Is it going to happen every time? No, but it's definitely possible to general estimate revenue for moderate success. All right, now, if you have a top 25 game, and I'm talking about a hit top 25 game, this does not mean that you have a game that hits the top 25 for 15 seconds. All right, that's great. You can put it on your resume, but that's not what we're talking about. If you have a top 25 game that's there for a few days that people really like, that has good retention, then it's very possible to make $50,000 from a game like that. Now, if you have a hit game, we're talking about a game that hits the very top, it's crushing it, it's doing really good, and maybe not even the very top game in the whole App Store, but top 10 multiple days, really popular game, and it's viral. You go to Twitter and you type in your game name and you see thousands of people talking about it. We're talking about a really hit game. Then it's possible to do $100,000. Of course, it's not going to happen every time, but as an estimate, we've seen that happen multiple times with multiple developers and multiple publishers, okay? Now, if you have a unicorn, extremely rare. I do know 2 people that this has happened to, all right? Heard of more than that. But if you have a unicorn that just takes over the App Store, that's absolutely huge, then it is possible to make more than $1 million as a developer. It's extremely rare, but it's definitely possible. We've seen this happen multiple times in the past 12 months with indie developers publishing a unicorn-style game. So before we continue, what about indie publishing? Isn't that all the rage right now? And first off, I fully support indie publishing. I think it's awesome. There will always be the Crossy Road type game that comes out of nowhere and absolutely crushes it, and that is amazing. It's absolutely great, but it's also very rare. Even games like Angry Birds came out published. And then, of course, after they got huge, they went on their own. And that's happened multiple times with games like Cut the Rope and Angry Birds. But when you go at it alone, it's like playing the lottery right now. And it's very hard to build a business playing the lottery. In my company, we're looking for repeatable success. And this is why we've stuck with the publishing model. It's worked great for us. It's helped us cross 55 million downloads, grow a 7-figure mobile game business, and consistently get games in the top of the charts. And here's how we do it. All right, so now we're going to talk about how you can get your games published. Let's get into the actual explanation of our systems. I'm going to show you guys exactly what we do. So I approach this process from 4 key areas. The first one is I analyze. The second thing I do is create. All right, then we pitch, and then, of course, repeat. Now listen, most people skip the 2 most important parts of this equation. Instead, their system looks like this. They just create and then pitch. That is it. And listen, this will rarely work. We do things in a unique way, and it works. We have a 100% success rate on getting games published. That means we've literally never sent a game to a publisher that we've made that did not get immediately picked up. And it's largely because of the 2 things that most people aren't doing, which is the analyze section and the repeat section. So here's what we do. Let's start off with analyze. We'll go through all of these. Analyze. This is about building the right game at the right time for the right publisher. The first step to building your game is to not build your game. Instead, you want to analyze what is going to work for the publisher. This is a stark contrast to what most people do. Most people create their game, then they hope and pray a publisher will like it. Instead, you want to reverse engineer what is working best for the publisher, because publishers are extremely smart. They spot trends and they create them before anyone else. They know what will be hot next year before anyone else. If they see something working, they won't announce it. They're not going to tell you. They're not going to post it on their Twitter feed, but they'll be looking for it. So how do you know what's working for them? It's actually pretty simple. The first step is to search the publisher on iTunes. We'll use Absolute Games for an example. This is my friend David's company, really good publishing company. All right, so we would search for Absolute Games. Then we would click on one of their games, and then we would click on their company name. And this is how we would find all of Absolute Games in the App Store. All right, so notice that we're sorted by bestsellers. These are all of their games sorted by bestsellers. Take note of what kind of games are listed here. I see a lot of minimal polygon-based games. I see a lot of Buildbox games, but let's just talk about the style. I see a lot of minimal polygon-style games. So the first thing you might think is, okay, this is the types of games we need to send Absolute. Now, this is even if you did this much research. A lot of people wouldn't even get this far. A lot of people would just send whatever they were creating without any thought process. But you might see this and think, okay, I'm going to make a minimal polygon-based game. But our research is not done yet. Now we've sorted by release date. Do you see any trends here? Interesting. It seems that the most recent games released by Absolute are not minimal polygon-based games. And I spot a few of the best sellers on this list too. Right here, they're all cute, illustrative, character-based games. We have Dashy the Cat, Flip Heroes, which is arguably minimal, but not as minimal and polygon-based as the other ones, and Rolly Worms. They're all character-based. We got some pixelated graphics. Definitely a different theme than we saw when searching by best games. In fact, the only ones that are minimal polygon-based games are these 2 paid games. And that is another interesting trend to notice. It seems that Absolute has recently changed its strategy, or at least it's signing different types of games right now. Now, does this mean that Absolute will only publish illustrated free games and minimal paid games? Absolutely not. Last week, they got a game featured by Apple that is a minimal game, okay? But we know for a fact that both of these are trending with Absolute. Also, this does not mean that free minimal games are dead. Other publishers still only release those. So it's always publisher dependent. You want to do this research on each publisher. But the interesting thing is this. Most people don't do the research. I bet you that a large number of Absolute's current submissions are minimal games, even though that is not what they are actively publishing at the moment, at least the most thing that they're publishing at the moment. It's important to research heavy and make sure you are creating the right game at the right time. From this point, you should not stop researching. This is step 1 of many, not the end of your research on publishers. You would keep digging. It'll take me too long to go over everything, but in short, you would now find out what games were recently successful for Absolute. You would want to find out how many downloads those recent successes had. Then you would build a list of qualities in these most successful games, and this list would be used during your game design process. Now you're ready to start building a game, but it's important to note Again, each publisher will have at least slight deviations in what they will sign. A game that's great for Absolute might not be great for Ketchup, and a game that's great for Ketchup might not be great for Fortify. Some games will have crossover appeal to multiple publishers, and others will not. Each publisher has its own trends, so if you truly want to succeed in this, you need to know what works for each publisher, okay? So now let's talk about creating the game. And we're going to show you how to build a featured-worthy game. Now, featured-worthy means that the game is good enough to be featured by Apple. Now, even though not every publisher out there relies on Apple for traffic, still, they're not going to sign a game if they don't think it's good enough to be featured by Apple. That's kind of the quality measurement here we're shooting for. So now it's time to build your game. Let's look at the core concepts that you should focus on when creating a game for publishers. You'll need 3 things to effectively create a great game. The first one is unique gameplay. You cannot rip off someone else's gameplay exactly. If you do that, your game will not get published. If you've submitted games to publishers you think look great and haven't even gotten a response back, then that's probably one reason. Innovative design. All right, you want to get design cues from other games from success, but you want to do something a little bit different. You want your game to stand out, but still be pleasing. And this is a new one that publishers are really looking for now, which is great retention. Retention is how long someone plays your game. Not even necessarily a single session, but how often do they come back and play this game? The more someone plays a game, the more viral the game gets because they're sharing it with their friends because it's in their mind more. The more money and revenue you're going to generate because they're going to see more ads. Retention is really important. It's always been important for social games, but this is getting important now for any type of game, including more simple styled arcade games. So here's how to do each. All right, so unique gameplay. While we want to use unique gameplay, we also want to base the mechanics on things that we know work. When you're analyzing publisher games, think about why they are fun. Did you play the more popular games longer than the publisher's other games? If so, why did you play them more? What about the gameplay was fun? Was the jump height too high or did it feel perfect? Notice the controls and movements of the game. Are they complex or are they simple? Was it one touch or did you use 2 touch? Was there invisible buttons? Was it swipe? Do the successful ones have anything in common? Also, focus on the frequency, timing, and concentration of the game. Are you tapping constantly? Is it like Flappy Bird where it's really this kind of monotonous tapping motion, right? Almost hypnotic? Is it stressful or was it easy tapping? Make as many notes as you can on the publisher's games. And later on, you'll find similarities between all these publishers. You'll be like, wow, a lot of these games are portrait, this and that. You'll notice things that are similar between them. The point is to question everything. Ask why to everything that you see, hear, or feel. Figure out all the elements that make the game successful and write them down on a notepad. Now borrow these elements for your game and listen. Maybe only 1/5 of these elements will make the cut. Heck, maybe only one of them will. But it gives you a starting point and it gives you a goal to reach, and it lets you base your gameplay ideas off of data instead of complete randomness. Inspiration is everywhere. Try taking a popular similar game and flipping it on its head. If the game has horizontal gameplay, flip it vertically. If the game has 1 ball, try adding 2. These little changes could be the inspiration that ignite the game's creation. All right, so now let's talk about innovative design. Bad design is an immediate turnoff to any publisher. This goes for both art and user interface design. So make sure to use pleasing color palettes. And remember, with design, less is always more. If you have no clue about design and you do not want to hire a designer or an artist, start studying the color palettes of games. Check out the colors used in the most popular games by your publisher. Are they bright? Are they pastel? Are they dark? Are they a little bit of everything? Then use this data and search similar palettes on colorlovers.com. This is an example of some palettes there that were on the homepage. I love this site and I've got a lot of different ideas from it. I've also used a color tool to get palette data off of other popular indie games. For example, I did this with the first game I ever got published called Phases. So Phases, the original inspiration for this game, it looks nothing like it, was called Electronic Superjoy. Really fun game. You can see here I use Pixelmator, and this is the color tool in Pixelmator, and I can find out the exact different hue, the hexadecimal color of the pink that they used. And I use this for original inspiration, but like everything I do in my companies, I model and improve the colors I found. I don't use the exact colors. The end result is unique, but you can feel the inspiration. Of course, this is phases on the left and Electronic Superjoy on the right. And I'm sure that Electronic Superjoy also got inspiration from games like Limbo, and who knows, Limbo probably got inspiration from something else, and it goes on forever. As you can see, I didn't use any of the exact colors, but instead I drew inspiration from the hue, the tone, the overall aesthetic of the game. Of course, you should base your design from the recent successful trends of the publisher. My game Phases was specifically built for Ketchup, also Ketchup 2 years ago. And I added a lot of white and brighter tones because that is what they were actively publishing at the time. So that's graphic design. And even if you have an absolutely beautiful game, regardless of how great it is, you still need to have great retention. Retention is how many users come back to play the game and how often they do it. This can be tough, but you need to figure out why the best games have great retention. This is something that all publishers started focusing on in 2016. Simply put, the more retention your game gets, the more revenue for both you and the publisher. This is a great way to build a lasting relationship with a publisher. So the best way to improve retention is have a fun game. All the other tricks like giving free daily prizes, sending push notifications, and adding new characters and features, that doesn't matter if your game is not fun. None of that should be your focus. Instead, put all the effort that you were going to spend on that into making a truly fun experience for your users. Now, what specifically is fun? And can it be reverse engineered? Seems like a tough one, but it absolutely can. Read the book, The Art of Game Design by Jesse Snell. Learn about surprise and wonder and how important these two things are to your game. Sink into the philosophy of what is a game. It's fascinating stuff. And if you're new, the best way to figure out fun, excitement, and retention is to study it. When you play games, notice your reactions and figure out why you have them. Take notes, pay attention to details, and schedule daily time to work on your game ideas. That's really important. If you Buildbox users out there, if you're using Buildbox, you need to do it daily. You need to really be involved and think about this. Or if you have a programmer team or whatnot, you need to talk with those guys daily. The more you do it, the better you'll get. So that's gameplay, design, and retention. The three most important aspects of creating a game when you are pitching to publishers. And remember, the game needs to be featured worthy as well. And featured worthy is an important phrase. It simply means the game's quality has to be high enough to be featured by Apple. Now, what is important to the feature team? Well, the first time I met with the App Store Games Division, I asked them this question. And they said that they were looking for extremely polished games. And publishers know this. This means you have to not only finish your game, but polish, and polish until it's perfected. Honestly, I don't think most people understand this part completely because you can't just do this 80%. It's got to be 110%. It's what separates the amateurs from the professionals. You have to be able to play your game and never think, that didn't feel 100% correct. That wasn't right. Every collision shape, hit point, enemy level, character movement, atmospheric change, color, and sound has to be perfect in your game. It has to feel like you've created a new universe that your game lives in. Everything from the menu to the sound effects have to be a cohesive endeavor. Everything must feel natural, and the user must never feel cheated when playing your game. When they die, they must always feel like it was completely in their era. The game must flow extremely well, and it must be effortless to play. And when you have done this, when you have done all of that, you are going to absolutely hate your game. And that is okay, because at that point, it'll be ready to submit to publishers. And that's what it takes to create a featured-worthy game. Even if it's a minimal game, it's not easy, but it's very, very rewarding. You'll have a lot of confidence in your game. You'll really believe you can do it at this point, and you'll almost be surprised if it doesn't get published. So now let's check out how you'll send this game to a publisher. All right, so this section's all about the pitch, successfully emailing your game to a publisher. So listen, guys, I'm going to level with you. Publishers get about 100 games per day sent to them. So they try to look at as many of these as possible, but it's impossible for each publisher to see them all. So I'm going to show you how we got our games seen by publishers before we knew them. But this is a tough one, and there are no guarantees here. Your best option, if possible, is to get an introduction. The game business, like many other businesses, works a lot on handshakes. So I do strongly recommend making it out to conferences, getting to know people, etc. And of course, you need to be able to make good games. Every introduction in the world won't matter if the game isn't up to speed. But don't lose hope. Even if you're not the social type, I got my games initially published without shaking any hands. Here's how I did it. All right, so how to submit your game to a publisher. Step 1, always keep emails short and sweet. Listen, guys, if you send an email to someone you want to do business with who has a business bigger than yours, always keep it short and sweet. Anyone's attention you want to get. Even at Buildbox, we get a lot of emails that are super long. They rarely get read unless it's to support staff. But if it's to key members in the organization, because people are busy, all right? These publishers are getting 100 emails per day. You got their attention if they open that email for about 5 seconds. Keep it short and sweet. Include a video of your game and no more than 3 pictures. Again, we just want to hit all the points that they want to see real fast. From your research, quickly explain why the game will work for them in no more than 2 sentences. Use bananatag.com to track opens and responses. So first, let me show you an example email, then we'll discuss Bananatag. So here's an example email. To super awesome publisher from Trey Smith, subject Minivan Dan, which is going to be the game we're creating here. Hi, publisher name. My name is Trey, and I'm from an indie studio in California. We created a new game I think you guys might be interested in. YouTube link there. You can see some screenshots below, but we created this specifically for publisher name. We chose color palettes, landscape gameplay, and scrolling backgrounds because it seems those games have been doing well. Thanks, Trey Smith. That's a solid email a publisher would love to get. It gets straight to the point, it doesn't waste their time, and it has all pertinent information. So note, please do not copy this word for word. Please do not do that. People have done stuff like this in the past when I've had a training event and I've showed an email example, and it ends up looking really, really weird. If a publisher starts getting 5, 10 emails that look like that, their exact same format, then that's not good. So do this. If you want to model that, don't go back. Don't watch that again. Don't screenshot that or attempt to find a recording so you can find out exactly what I said. Just take the inspiration from it, okay? So this is to give you an example of how an email should look. Most importantly, is to show you the brevity of these emails. That's the big important part. When you are reading hundreds of emails per day, it's very important that they get to the point. So the easiest way to get passed over is to write more than what I did above. Now let's talk about Bananatag. This is easy. It's just open tracking for Gmail. It's a Chrome extension plugin. You install this plugin, and then anytime someone opens an email that you send from your Gmail account, you'll get a notification. You can actually decide when you actually track this. So anytime you send a message to a publisher, you'll tick off a little box that says track this email, and then you'll know when they opened it and when they clicked on any links. All right, and that's great. That's how you can find out if they're seeing it, because not everyone's going to have time to reply. And it's a good way to know if you've been passed over, all right? If someone opened it, they clicked the link, you don't hear back after a couple days, then obviously they've decided it was not a good fit for their company. Also, a great bonus with Bananatag is you can split test different subject lines in your email. Find out what works better over time. You know, just try a few different things and notice if something seems to work better than something else and find out what gets a better open rate. And finally, for the people who are having a hard time reaching publishers, as you'll soon learn, we're about to start working with publishers and helping developers get guaranteed views of their game. So more about that in a minute. So that's emailing. Easier said than done, but these tips can definitely help you get seen in a sea of submissions. Now, the final part is to repeat. You want to build relationships. And guys, this is extremely powerful. This is what can cause your business to be truly sustainable. And that is really important. With any of the other options out there, like ASO, you never know if they're going to work tomorrow. If you're buying traffic to your games, you're only dependent on that traffic source selling you traffic for cheap. We all saw that happen in 2011. But when you're depending on multiple publishers to be your marketing power behind your games, if you have good relationships with those guys, and if you can work with them, and when you create games, pretty much know they're going to be signed before they're even finished, then you've created a sustainable business. Okay, so this is where we get to the sustainable business aspect of the training. While everything we discussed so far can get you a publishing deal, this section is what can build an ongoing, profitable business. Because having one hit is great, but it really doesn't matter in the long run, okay? You want to do this consistently so you can grow your business. You don't want to have one hit and then quit your job and then everything falls apart. And to do this, you need to build a solid relationship with your publishers. We'll do this with 2 phases. The first part of building publisher relationships is phase 1. You want to earn their respect, okay? Phase 2 is going to be increase the relationship. You don't try to increase the relationship with a publisher until they respect you, right? Now, here's how you earn their respect. First off, you're always available. They're going to be dealing with a lot of flighty people, okay? Just human nature. A lot of the people they're going to deal with, they're not going to deliver stuff on time. We're always available. You always over-deliver. When a publisher asks you to create a feature in your game, you don't just do the bare minimum. You say, that's a great idea. You know what? We even tried something to make it even cooler, all right? You want to always over-deliver. You always beat time estimates. You don't tell them that you're going to have something ready in 2 weeks and then deliver it in 3 months. All right, that's not professional. They're not going to want to deal with you. Instead, you say it's going to be ready in 2 weeks and then you have it done, maybe a day or 2 early. No one's expecting you to work a miracle here, but you got to be responsible. They got to see that. You always learn from your mistakes. You got to own up to it. You can't be a prima donna in this business when you're working with publishers. And you never ask for more than you give. Remember, there's a lot more developers out there than publishers. You need them more than they need you. So be respectful of that. All right, so then you want to increase the relationship. You're going to do this by finding out what is working, by talking to them about, hey, we're thinking about the next game. What's working here? Learn what they are wanting. They'll tell you once you increase this relationship with them. Hey, what are you guys thinking about for the next 6 months? What trends are you seeing? Share your data. Bring things to the table. Show them, hey, look, we analyzed all the top games and we're seeing this. You guys agree with this? Help them in different ways. If you see any other way you can help them out, do that in their business. Say, hey, look, if you guys need a support person, I happen to know someone who's really good. Connect them with anyone you can. You meet other publishers, you meet people in the industry, let them know. Say, hey, I just had dinner with so-and-so. If you guys want an introduction, let me know if you need help there at Apple or Google or whatever. Increase your business potential, okay? Let them know that you're here for the long run and you're ready to do whatever it takes. Maybe you can get a special deal going with them. Maybe you can get something where they are working with celebrities or working with some tie-ins with music or who knows, right? Just make sure to explore all the potentials that are possible once your relationship is increased. It's not hard, yet so many people drop the ball on this. Basically, be the absolute coolest developer they have ever had on their roster. Always be assisting, but never annoying. And of course, use research and everything we discussed in the system to consistently churn out hit games for them. You would be very surprised at how many people in this industry really don't know what they're doing. They're not basing anything on data. They're just shooting from the hip, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it's a real rarity in the industry when someone's paying attention to the details and can provide information on that. People really value that. So that's the short of it. There's a lot more to this process, but that's the start of how we get our games published. And listen, if you're interested in learning more and you want me to personally help you get your game signed, then I have some pretty cool news for you. We've had a lot of people ask for this. And for the first time ever, I'm going to be working with a select group of people to help them get games published. This is unlike anything I've done before. It's a full year program, and I will be assisting every step of the way from creation to pitching and more. It starts with 6 weeks of coaching sessions where I'll be walking you through every step of the process. If you don't have a game yet, then we'll create a game during this time. If you already have one that you're working on, then we'll discuss what publisher this would work best for and the action steps you need to make. I'll be giving you specific advice on your game to show you how to make it featured worthy. I'll be making sure that you're on track. I'll introduce you to industry guys that are crushing it. And then finally, when your game is ready, I will be personally pitching this game to the publishers for you with guaranteed views that they will see your game. This is pretty awesome. As you guys will see, we already have deals worked out with every major publisher in the mobile market. We will not own any portion of your game. All we're doing is making the introductions and helping you get signed. It's pretty amazing. It's called Publisher Elite, and I can't wait to show it to you guys. So there's been a problem in the mobile market the last 2 years. Game creators are having a hard time getting publishers' attention. If you've ever tried to email a publisher, you've seen this. And publishers are having a hard time finding the diamond in the rough. Publisher Elite is created to solve that gap. It's insanely in-depth, and it's my first ever year-long personal coaching program where I'll be working with you for a full year. It's unlike anything we've ever offered before, and in Publisher Elite, we will create, finalize, polish, and publish your game together. I will be there for every step of this process, from the very beginning of coming up with the idea all the way to the polishing and finalizing stages. And when your game is ready, I will be personally emailing the publisher and pitching it for you. This is an amazing opportunity, and we're working with every major publisher in the industry to make it happen. This includes Ketchup, Fortify Games, who publish Color Switch, Umbrella Games, Absolute Games, EA Chilingo, and Nanovation. We have partnerships set up with all of these publishers, and when you create a game and we send it to them, they get guaranteed views. They will definitely see your game. Here's how it will work. So first off, we'll have 6 weeks of live training sessions. As we mentioned, this is going to be the foundation, the most important parts of learning how to build a published game. These are live. They're with GoToWebinar. I'll be talking with you guys in a live setting, taking your questions and answering them, and really discussing your business. The big goal with Publisher Elite is to understand what each and every one of you guys wants to do, the types of games you want to make, so I can help you effectively. During this 6-week period, I'll also be doing private coaching sessions with each and every one of you. I'm scheduling 2 hours per day, every Monday through Friday, every business day for 6 weeks to talk with you guys, learn about what you're doing. We can do this on Skype or the phone, whatever's easier for you. Also, we have 12 monthly submission opportunities of your games to publishers. This is a big one, and it's more than us just submitting a game to a publisher. We're going to look over your game. We're going to give you feedback, tell you what we think you need to do before you submit this game. We're going to help you polish and finish this game, give you all the advice you need to create a publisher and a featured worthy game. Then I'm going to personally email the publisher and say, hey, look, he made this game. She made this game. I think it's great. Why don't you guys check it out? We're also doing live Q&A phone interviews with famous publishers and game creators. Zeb Jaffer, co-founder at Fortify, is doing one. The guys at Nanovation, Absolute Games, David Reichelt that made Color Switch, and more. We'll also be doing 4 live quarterly trend reporting events. This is to make sure you guys are up to speed throughout the whole entire year. Every 3 months, I'll be doing a quarterly trend reporting event. This will be a live event online where I'm showing you guys what we're doing, where the scene is headed, and what you should be focused on. And also, during this whole 12-month period, you'll have support staff on call, support staff that has game businesses to help you with every process of your game and your business. So as you can see, this is a very unique program. The first 6 weeks are all about training, helping, and consulting you so you have the skills to create a publisher-worthy game. Then for the 12-month period, we'll be personally helping you get your game signed. It's a massive year-long program, and it's also a very live program. The training sessions are live, the support is live, and the coaching sessions with me are live. I'll treat our conversations just like I do with my business friends and mastermind partners. Everything will always be held confidential, and you'll also always get a completely 100% honest answer from me. Combined with the training, this is the ultimate setup to help you reach your goals. Speaking of the training sessions, they are an instrumental part of this program. Each week, we will first have a live session. It will be on a specific part of making your game or building your business. Also, if you're working on a game already, we'll be discussing that. And we'll start from the very beginning and discuss every aspect you need to do to make a great featured worthy game. I'll be answering your questions, getting feedback on what you're working on, and of course, talking with the group. You'll ping me and I'll review your work at any time, while giving you more specific advice on what you should focus on. So let's first break down the training sessions. Again, it's a 6-week live training program, and the first week is all about your foundation. I've taken everything that I've learned in the game business the last 5 years and in business itself the last 10 years, and I've boiled it down to the most important facts. This week is called the foundation, and I'm breaking this down into 2 sections. The first one is your personal preparations. And the first thing I'll do is welcome everyone to the group. We'll talk more about me, and I want to learn about the group, what kind of games you guys want to make, what your focus is here. And then we'll talk about fortifying your personal setup, whether you have an office or you work at home at night, on the weekends. We'll talk about that and the best way to set things up. We'll talk also about managing multiple projects or jobs at once. I did this myself. I worked another job for a while, and we'll even talk about when you should take the risk of leaving that job. Then we'll talk about the pull shot method. This is what I use for motivation. I'm a fairly motivated guy. It's not too many times I don't feel like getting something done, but when it does happen, I use this to pull myself out. Then I'm going to show you guys the 7 essential daily business habits I do every single day that I think is extremely important and that you should use in your business. Then the second section here will be about process creation. All right, the first part is to get you prepared, mentally and even in your physical space. Now we're going to talk about process creation. A lot of this, guys, is to teach you how to fish instead of just giving you fish. I want you guys to understand how we come up with the things that we do so you can do that yourself. And if something new happens, if you decide to get in the VR industry, then you know how we're going to be figuring out that industry as well, and you can use these techniques. So, for example, the first thing we'll talk about is understanding industry infiltration, what that is and why it's so important for success in any industry. Then we'll talk about effective digital spying. That's a big way we figured out a lot of the tactics and stuff that we're going to go over these next 6 weeks, and we'll talk about that in detail. Then we'll talk about digital networking. Listen, even if you're in a small town, I grew up in a small town. If you're in a small town or if you don't make it out to events and conferences, you can network digitally just by emailing people. I've met some amazing people through cold email. I'll talk about how to grow contacts and do that. Then we'll talk about advance, model, and improve. This is pretty much my mantra for life, and I've been doing more advanced stuff with this. If you haven't heard of model and improve, I'll talk about that as well, but it's pretty much how I built every business from Buildbox to our game business to stuff before. All right, and then I'll talk about my top 4 business books that you absolutely must read. These are the ones that I reread each year, at least skim through, and I'll talk about that and why they're important to me. Then week 2, we're going to get into the intelligence. Now you're all set up and ready. Now let's talk about the actual publishers and figuring out the right type of game to make. All right, so this week will also be broken down into 2 sections. The first one being publisher diagnostics. Now, we're going to first start off with an in-depth publisher discussion about which publishers you should go for, really talking in detail about that. And it's going to depend on how hard you want to work, how great you want your game to be, how much time you're going to put into all this, and the type of results you want to see, and what type of game you enjoy making. There's a lot that goes into this, okay? So we'll discuss that because some publishers are going to be more competitive than others. We'll go over all that stuff. Then we're going to talk about the types of games that you should submit to each publishers. Remember earlier in this event, I talked about a lot of work that we can do to figure out what publishers want. Well, we've obviously already done all of that. So I'm just going to show you guys all that stuff so you don't have to do it. We'll talk about the types of games that we recommend making right now. We've done a lot of future proofing. We don't like to create games and then by the time the games are finished, the publisher says, those aren't really hot anymore. We don't do that. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about your chances of success with each one. We're going to have a high success rate because we're not going to send games to publishers unless we think that they'll get signed. And if we don't think they will, we're going to work with you and have you finish it up and do the things that are required to get a deal. And then we're going to give you our tailor-made recommendation. This is going to be for you. It really is tailor-made. So we're going to split everyone into multiple groups and say, okay, look, if you want to make this type of game, then this guy's going to be best. If you want to put this amount of work, then I would go here, etc., etc. We'll give you some documents on that to help guide you in the right direction. Then publisher research. Now we're going to talk about advanced research of publisher titles. I'm going to go really into detail on this. I touched on this earlier, but we're going to go really into detail. I'm going to show you guys the download hacker method, exactly how you can find out how many downloads any game has, like down to a couple thousand, pretty accurate. Then I'm going to show you guys how to build a finalized database of all of these apps from each publisher. We will also share our database that we've already created, again, saving you from having to do the work. And then we're going to talk about creating a gameplay model from all of this data. All right, and that's going to be really important because, again, we want to base our games on previous success so that the publisher thinks, wow, this probably has a shot. And then also it just makes it a lot more fun and easy in the building process. Then we're going to talk about finalizing art direction because we're going to get more into that in week 3. And I want you guys set up and ready. Now, week 3 is going to be all about the build, actually creating your game. This is going to be broken down to 2 sections also. The first one being idea and graphic design. So we're going to discuss your game idea. By now, after the previous week, you're going to have some sort of idea of what you're going to be creating. Then we're going to finalize this design structure and the idea structure as well. We're going to select your build method. I know a lot of people here will be Buildbox customers, and that's awesome. Obviously know that software fairly well. But if you're with Unity, if you're programming, if you're doing whatever, it's totally fine. We're going to let you decide what the best way to build your game is. Then we're going to talk about how to create art. Even if you're not an artist, I'm a terrible graphic designer and I've made a few games that have done pretty good. So I'm going to show you guys how I do that with Pixelmator, the software of my choice, but you can use many other tools instead. And then I'm going to show you guys the only 4 styles of art that you should be making in 2017. Now, the next section of week 3 is all about game and level design. The first thing I'm going to do is share my game design manifesto. After reading all these books and studying and making a lot of games and getting a lot of downloads, I have some serious theories about this, and we pretty much base all of our games on this, and I will be sharing that with you guys. And then I'll share my personal level design document. So we have a company and we hire employees to make levels. They got pretty cool jobs. They actually get to make games for a living. And when we do this, we actually have design documents and systems I've written myself that I've created to help people create good levels so we don't have to manually create every level anymore. I'm going to share this with you guys. You can later on, when your company grows, use this in your company. Then I'm going to talk about main menu, interface, and user experience design, and then building for retention. And finally, you'll get the game design checklist to make sure you're on track. Now, week 4 is all about countermeasures, and this is really important. No one talks about it, but we're going to do a lot of things that are going to vastly help you get your game published, and I call these countermeasures. And they're going to really break down into 2 sections, but the most important aspect of this is we're going to do the things that most publishers are going to ask you to do anyway, and it's going to make your game have a much higher chance of success of getting published. So the first part of this is called creating attraction. And this is why we've never been turned down for a game that we've created to a publisher. So I'm going to talk about publisher relationships 101, and then what publishers want to see in your game. Now, I'm also going to talk about social sharing setup and the things that you have to have in your game that every publisher is going to want. And if they don't see it, it's going to look like a lot of work left for them to do, right? If they see a game that looks like it's almost ready to put out there right then, it's going to be much more attractive. And then we're going to talk about analyzing your gameplay so that it works well with publishers. Is the game fun? Is it attractive? Is it ready for a publisher? Then we're going to talk about polishing and monetization. The polishing process in the bird's eye view. This is how we approach all of our polishing. I'll explain that. Polishing doesn't have to be extremely difficult. It's just got to be done well. We've polished games in an hour and a half before. And maybe they weren't completely production ready. Maybe we had to do that 2 different times. But we're not talking about spending years on a game or even months or weeks. So we'll talk about that. Then we're going to talk about playtesting and preparation, then database tweaks and changes, database being the key word there, then retention, monetization, and growing viral, and then finalizing your game. All right, then the next week is the charge. This is how you approach it. We're going to break this down into 2 sections. First, we're going to show you specifically how you can pitch publishers. Now, the second section is going to be how we're going to team up to do this, and we're going to pitch them for you, right? But this is a 12-month program. After the 12 months, you're going to want to be able to pitch publishers yourself, new publishers that you haven't met yet. Maybe a new publisher will pop up in 3 years. We want you to be ready for that. So first, we're going to talk about live game evaluation. We're going to have a discussion on that. Then we're going to talk about the pre-charge checklist. Before you charge out and you go and you try to get a publisher, what you need to check off and make sure you have in your game. We're going to talk about going at it solo and how to handle this if you don't have any connections with the publisher. And then I'm going to show you guys, really important, how to make the perfect video. Because before I pitch your game for you, it's going to have to be perfect, right? We got to have a great video, a really strong game. So it's important that you have this skill set. I'm going to show you how to do it. I make all of our game videos myself. It's not that hard. Then we're going to talk about crafting the perfect pitch. After you have a great video, you have a good game, how do we pitch this? We'll go into detail on that with multiple examples. Then we're going to talk about our team up strategy. It's pretty simple. We're going to go everything in detail. First off, we're going to have a mid-month submission process. So on the 15th of each month, you'll submit your games to me. And then I'll look them over and I'll tell you, hey, look, this game's great. I'm going to submit this at the end of the month. Or I'll say, hey, look, we got 2 weeks. You got a few changes here. Let's get those in here. Or I'll say, listen, you're honestly super far off. We got to get the quality up here. So do this, 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 and this, and get it ready for the next month's submission. So that's how the submission process works. All the publishers are on board and they know that I will be personally emailing them at the end of each month with games I think will work well for their platform. All right. So also you'll get my personal recommendation. Now, obviously, I have to think a game's going to work well. If you make a game that would never work with Ketchup, I'm not going to submit it to Ketchup, but I'll communicate with you that, and I'll give you recommendations if you really want to make that illustrative game a better publisher for that. And then also we'll talk about how you can get the publisher you want. They all have their own formula for success, and we work closely enough with them to understand what they're looking for. All right. And some are going to be a lot easier than others. So a lot of it's going to depend on how much work you want to put into the game. We'll discuss that too. Then I'll talk about the verified views from these publishers, how that system works. It's pretty simple. And then I'll give you the pre-trade checklist. This is just the things you need to do before you submit a game to the mid-month submission process. We obviously want to make sure we're looking at games that are complete and finished. So I'll give you that checklist. And that is week 5, the charge. And now we're in week 6. This is all about growth in 2 different levels, growing your publisher relationships and also growing your company. I want to teach you guys how you can scale this out to be a really big company if that's what you're aiming for. So the first part of week 6 will be about becoming multi-publish, growing publisher relations, releasing multiple games with publishers, how to get that done, seeing leadership roles. This will make releasing those multiple games easier, getting special opportunities from publishers, and becoming an industry mover. Really important steps to grow your company. And then once you've done this, you'll want to really grow your company internally, and we'll talk about that. Social media mastery. If you become an industry mover, it's going to be important that you master that correctly. We'll show you how to do that. Virtual assistants, really important when you want to grow a company. We have a company that is both in office and also remote, and I'll talk about that. I'll show you the advanced system creation we do. This is something I started doing when Buildbox started growing, and it really made things a lot easier to scale out. I'll talk about outsourced hiring methods. I built most of my companies off of outsourcing before hiring people full time. And honestly, I think half of our employees came from outsourcing. We just liked them so much we hired them. I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about how you can scale this company when you're ready, because the sky's really the limit. We're not near done. And I'll talk about our future plans as well. So as you can see, the training covers every aspect of building a published game, and even more importantly, a whole entire company. From the seed of your idea to the final push to a publisher, all the way to expanding and more. I spent a long time reverse engineering every part of this process. The training is the core foundation for Publisher Elite, and it's backed by 4 other key features of this program. The first one is personal access and premium support. The second one is live expert Q&A sessions. The third one is quarterly trend reporting events. And then finally, of course, the publisher game submissions. Let's very quickly go over each of these so you know how they work. Personal access and premium support. This is really cool. We've never done this before. You'll be able to schedule an appointment to talk with me live for 6 weeks. You can schedule multiple appointments if you want to, and I'm here to help you out with your business. We can talk about a specific game. We can talk about publishers. We can talk about your game plan, or even just general business advice. And I'll be doing that on Skype, and I'll also be doing it on the phone if that's easier for you. We will also provide 12 months of premium support. You can talk with veteran game business owners via email. Our goal for this is simple. We want to help you bypass roadblocks and make sure you never get stuck again while you're in this course. We've seen a lot of people hit a small obstacle and it kills their company, it kills their business, and they can't move forward. We want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. Next, we have live expert Q&A sessions. Each week for 6 weeks, you'll be on a live call with me and an industry expert. Personally grill founders from Absolute, Nanovation, and Fortify Games. And talk with developers like David Reichelt, who made Color Switch, Simon Crack of Dead Cool Apps, who has 10 Apple features, and Kevin Wolstenholme of Rising High Apps, who also has 10 Apple features. All these guys know a lot about creating games. They know a lot about getting published, and you'll be able to ask them the questions that you might have. These will be in conjunction with the live training and moderated by a professional. Quarterly trend report meetings. Every 3 months, we'll gather for a private online event the first year. I'll show you what's currently trending in the market and what we see coming around the corner. We'll discuss new publishers, different trends, and tell you what changes we're making in our game company. And of course, if new publishers come on the rise, we're going to talk to them about working with them as well. Things change fast in the app world, but you will be on target with these quarterly reports. And then finally, the 12-month publisher submissions. I've touched on this, so I'll just make it quick. In the middle of each month, we'll ask you to send us your games. We'll review and give you a list of changes if needed. At the end of each month, will get your final games and send them to a list of publishers. This is important, guys. We do not take any percentage of your game. We don't own any of it, and we don't take a percentage from the publisher or from you. It's a direct relationship. We literally just connect you, and that's it. You can send a game every single month if it's good. You literally have 12 opportunities here if you make 12 good games. So guys, that's Publisher Elite, a complete live suite of training, expert Q&A, events, personal consultation, publisher submissions, and more. And this is the largest training package we have ever released. And never before have we released a product that has this much live and personalized training. We're very excited to make this available to everyone because previously, this is something we just offered to enterprise clients. Now let's discuss the value of Publisher Elite. All right, so first off, the training. Typically, we charge $1,000 to $2,000 for a full live week of training. So we're going to round this off at $1,500, and that's for 6 weeks. Now, for personal consulting, I do this with enterprise customers, and we charge $10,000 a month. I also do in-person at $4,000 for 4 hours. Now, I'm going to put this at $10,000 here, but the truth is this is 6 weeks where you'd have access to call me and get personal consultation at any time. We can talk about your games and your business plans, etc. Normally, that would be $15,000, but I've never done a package for $15,000 before, so we're just going to round that down to $10,000. All right, for quarterly trend events, that would be $1,000 each. They're live events, so that would be $4,000. 1 year premium support would be $2,500. That's email support where you can talk at any time to a game business owner. 6 live Q&A sessions at $500 each would be $3,000. Then the 12 game reviews, and this is where you send your game once a month in the middle of the month. We analyze it, we see what you need to do, we give you specific advice on it and help you out with that. That would be $1,000 per month, which will be $12,000. And then of course the 12 publisher submissions. It's more one of those priceless things. You probably will never find anyone offering something like that again. But if we said $1,000 a submission, that would be $12,000. So that would bring the total to $52,500. Now, this is a very high valued product, and we would easily charge that much for enterprise customers, possibly more. But this specific product is not being created for enterprise. Instead, we're making this for small businesses and entrepreneurs to test it out. I don't know if we'll ever do it again, but we're going to do it this one time. So to join Publisher Elite, you will not have to invest anywhere near $52,500. It's not even half that. But regardless, you won't be buying anything today. Because with any personalized product like this, we only sell seats via an application process. The reason we do this is because of how much personal attention is involved in these products. If we're going to be spending 1 year helping you get your games published, we want to make sure 2 things. First, that it's a good fit for you. We need to know your goals and make sure that we can help you achieve them. And then 2, that it's a good fit for us. We also need to know that you understand the industry and are willing to do the work required. So here's how the application process works. To apply for Publisher Elite, you pay a $1,000 deposit. This will start the application process. If for any reason at all that you do not join, it doesn't matter if we decide it's not a good fit or if you decide you don't want to move forward for any reason, this amount gets refunded. If all parties agree to move forward, the remainder payment is only $4,999. That's it for the full 12 months. There is no extra monthly payments, and we do not keep any percentage of your game. And we'll also have payment plan options available. Now, our longtime followers, they will immediately notice 2 different things. First off, this is the first time we've offered something with this much personal service. And this is because we're heavily invested in each user getting their game published. And honestly, we know what it takes to do this right. With a 12-month program like this, we have every opportunity to help you create the right game for the right publisher. The second thing they'll notice is this is about half the price of our previous Elite programs. And the reason for this is simple. We wanted to make it a no-brainer. We want you to be within reach to recoup your investment with your first published game. So to start the application process, simply click the button below or head to publisherelite.com. Now let's talk about 2 fast action bonuses we have for people who order quickly. These 2 bonuses are not for sale at any price. And this first one is only for the first 10 successful applications. Now here's what that means. This is for the first 10 people who put in an application, we accept, and then they move forward and join Publisher Elite. While everyone in Publisher Elite will be able to schedule a conference call with me to discuss their business, the first 10 people, these people will get more VIP style treatment. They'll get my private cell phone number, and you can call me or text me directly at any time during this 6-week training period. And I have an iPhone, so you can feel free to use iMessages. I'm a real big fan of doing the voice messages on iMessages, so I'll probably leave a lot of those back to you if you text me. Also, this phone number is not a burner. This is actually my private cell phone number, so please be respectful. Don't post the number online, etc. I would have loved to offer this to everyone in Publisher Elite. I even thought about it, but it's just not feasible from a logistics point of view. So that's the mobile text access. That's only available for the first 10 people. There's no limit on that. Call, text. We'll talk about your business. You can get me anytime. Don't have to schedule an appointment. So this next and final fast action bonus is only for the first 15 people who successfully apply, get accepted, and then join Publisher Elite. And it's a real big bonus. This one also can't be bought at any price. Well, at least for about a year. Right now it can't be, but it will be in about 12 months. And it's called Buildbox Next. Buildbox Next is the code name of our 3.0 version of Buildbox. It's been in development for about 9 months, but will not be available for purchase until early 2018. With Buildbox Next, we're introducing a completely new way of making games. It's called node-based creation. Let's check out a quick video on how it works. So pretty cool, that's Buildbox Next. And this new system completely removes all boundaries in game creation. It's pretty insane and extraordinarily fun to play with. It's an absolutely huge leap in game creation, even a bigger jump than going from 1.0 to 2.0. And we're already using it in our game business. The next 3 games we're creating are with Next. And no one else in the world will have it besides us and the people who get this fast action bonus. And please note, we will need anyone who gets this software to sign an NDA confirming you won't leak out details on the software. You will have the software for the full year before release, which means we'll be adding a lot of features and a lot of new things besides just the nodes. That's just part 1 of a multi-part plan. And you'll see that, which is awesome, but we got to make sure it doesn't leak out. Finally, with this bonus, you'll get an extra private live event with other Next users. I'll be showing you how to use the software and what we're doing with it as well. So that's Buildbox Next. That's our next generation software, and this is step 1. This software is going to go through a lot of changes. We have some very exciting things planned that these 20 people who are testing this software with us will see throughout the development phase. This is going to be fun. This is going to be our focus group. We're going to get a lot of feedback from these users. I'm excited to see what you guys create with this. So very excited about that. Buildbox Next, and it's only available for the first 20 applications who join Publisher Elite. Before we close this event, I would like to make a few more points about the application process. Here's specifically how it will work. First off, after you pay the $1,000 deposit fee, my assistant Natalie will email you a list of 5 questions. These questions will be to gauge how well you know the game business and your goals with this program. And please note, you do not have to have experience. Even if you've never made a game, that's okay. And you don't have to be a Buildbox customer. But you do need to have an understanding of the mobile game business. So during this interview process, you can also ask us as many questions as you like. We will move forward if both parties agree, and if not, we'll immediately refund your deposit. The first class will start after the holidays in January. So that's it. That's Publisher Elite, the only program ever created that will hold your hand through every step of the process. We help you create the right game. We help you make it perfect, and then we help you get it published. It's a full year long, but with very limited availability because of how much personal attention we give each person who makes it in Publisher Elite. So apply now if you're ready to take the next leap in your game business. And please note, this is a pilot program. We've never offered this before publicly. If we offer this again, in the future we plan on taking 10% from each published game. We actually strongly considered doing that this time, but decided not to for the first charter members. We can't wait to get started, and if you're ready to apply, just click on the button below, or you can head over to publisherelite.com. Once you start the application process, it'll take a few days for us to go through all of this, so you'll have plenty of time to talk with a significant other or business partners. We've built this to be a great investment for your game company, and we're excited to get started. And I can't wait to work with a new group and help you achieve your goals. So guys, once again, this is Trey Smith. Thanks so much for joining me. I had a really good time putting this together. I love doing events like this. I love putting products together like this. We're going to have a great time for everyone who applies. I'll be talking to you soon. So thanks so much. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.